Hey everyone, welcome back to VoxQueue. Today we've got some wild ones. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's get into it. The first story starts with something subtle, the kind of thing that makes you question whether you're imagining it or whether everyone around you has quietly decided something about you without telling you. Dylan noticed it the way most people notice social shifts. Slowly. At first it was small. Plans happening without him. A movie night he heard about the day after. A group dinner he only found out about through someone's Instagram story. Now, normally that stuff happens. Friend groups are messy. Schedules don't line up. But after the fourth or fifth time, it started feeling intentional. Dylan had been part of this friend group since college. 6 of them. The kind of group where there's always a group chat buzzing, always someone planning something for the weekend. So when he started noticing the weird distance, it didn't make sense. One night he texted the group chat, "Anyone doing anything Friday?" Silence, which was weird because normally someone would respond within minutes. 2 hours later, one friend finally replied, "Not sure yet." That same night, Dylan opened Instagram and saw 3 of them sitting together at a bar. He stared at the story for a second. Then he put his phone down. Now, here's where the psychology kicks in. When people feel socially excluded, the brain immediately starts searching for explanations. Did I do something? Did I miss something? Did someone say something about me? Dylan tried to brush it off, but then things got stranger. Conversations in person felt rehearsed, like everyone was being careful around him. One afternoon, they were all hanging out at Jake's apartment. Dylan walked into the kitchen, and suddenly the conversation stopped. You know that moment. Everyone suddenly becomes interested in their drink. Dylan looked around and said, "Okay, what did I walk into?" Jake laughed awkwardly. "Nothing, man." And technically that answer was true, because the conversation they were having about Dylan wasn't happening in person. It was happening somewhere else. 2 weeks later, Dylan got a message from one of the friends in the group, Tyler. Tyler sent a screenshot, then immediately followed it with, "Shit, ignore that." Dylan opened the screenshot and immediately realized what he was looking at. It was a group chat, but not the one he was in. The chat name was literally Core Crew, and Dylan's name wasn't in the participant list. He scrolled through the screenshot. At first, it looked normal. Memes, weekend plans. Then he saw the messages. One said, "Dylan gets exhausting sometimes." Another said, "He makes everything about himself." And then another, "I just don't feel like dealing with his drama every time we hang out." Dylan stared at the phone for a long time. Because here's the thing, criticism from strangers is easy to dismiss. Criticism from people you trust hits differently. Tyler quickly sent another message. "Dude, I didn't mean to send that." Dylan replied calmly, "No worries," which is the most dangerous response someone can give, because it means they're thinking. Instead of confronting anyone immediately, Dylan decided to do something smarter. He started observing. He paid attention to who initiated those conversations, who seemed uncomfortable around him, who avoided eye contact, and slowly a pattern started forming. Most of the negative comments in the screenshot came from one person, Jake. Which was interesting because Jake was also the one who usually organized the group hangouts, meaning Jake controlled who got invited. Now Dylan had 2 options. He could confront Jake privately, or he could let things play out. He chose option 3. Wait. A week later, the group planned a birthday dinner for one of the friends, Alex. Dylan showed up like normal. Everyone greeted him, smiles, small talk. But you could feel the tension under the surface. Halfway through dinner, Jake made a joke. "Dylan, you still talking about that same work problem you've had for 3 months?" A few people laughed, not in a cruel way, but the tone was there. Dylan leaned back in his chair, calm. "Actually," he said, "I've been talking about something else recently." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah?" Dylan pulled out his phone. "Yeah, I've been talking about this." He placed the phone on the table and slid it toward the center. The screenshot, the private group chat, the entire table went silent. Jake looked at the screen, then looked at Tyler. Tyler immediately said, "It was an accident."
Dylan nodded. I know. Then he looked back at Jake. What I'm curious about is why you started this. Jake's face went red. I didn't start anything. Dylan tapped the screen. You literally named the chat. Someone across the table whispered, "Oh shit." Jake tried to laugh it off. It was just venting. Dylan nodded again. That's fair. Then he added something that changed the energy completely. I just thought it would be interesting if everyone saw the whole conversation. Because Dylan hadn't just seen the one screenshot, Tyler had panicked and sent him the rest, and suddenly the dynamic flipped. Now everyone at the table was scrolling through messages about themselves too, because Jake hadn't just complained about Dylan, he'd complained about everyone. Within 10 minutes, the dinner basically dissolved. People started arguing, one person left, another person confronted Jake directly. And Dylan, he just sat there quietly, because the truth had already done the work. Friend groups rarely implode all at once, but sometimes all it takes is a single screenshot. If you thought that was messy. Now this next one is a different kind of chaos. Elena worked at a mid-sized marketing agency. Open office, glass conference rooms, the kind of place where Slack notifications never stop. Elena had been there about a year when the problems started. At first, it looked like simple miscommunication. A project she submitted came back from her manager covered in comments. Why didn't you follow the new format? Elena stared at the email because she had followed the format, exactly. She replied politely, I used the template from Carla's message on Monday. Her manager responded, that's not the template Carla sent, which was strange because Elena still had the email. She opened the thread again. The instructions were clear, but when she compared the manager's forwarded version, the instructions were slightly different. Elena frowned, but she let it go. Then it happened again. Another project, another criticism, another email chain where the instructions somehow looked different than what Elena remembered. Eventually, Elena started saving everything. Screenshots, email downloads, full message threads. And slowly, something became clear. The altered emails were always coming from the same person, Carla. Carla was the senior coordinator on the team, friendly on the surface, but very competitive. One afternoon, Elena overheard Carla talking to another coworker near the coffee machine. She's nice, Carla said quietly, but she just misses details. Elena stood there pretending to stir her coffee because suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't a mistake, this was reputation damage. The strategy was simple, make Elena look unreliable without openly attacking her. And the scary part is, it was working. Managers don't always dig deep into email threats. They see a summary, they trust the person forwarding it. So Elena waited. She kept collecting the receipts. Then the moment arrived, a big campaign meeting. The team gathered in the conference room. The manager started reviewing project updates. Then he paused. Elena, we need to talk about the instructions you ignored on the Johnson account. Carla sat quietly across the table, watching. The manager pulled up the forwarded email chain on the screen. You can see here where Carla explained the changes. Elena leaned forward slightly, calm. Can I show the full thread? The manager hesitated. Sure. Elena plugged in her laptop, opened the original email, and suddenly the room got quiet. Because the timestamps didn't match, the forwarded version had been edited, the wording was different, and when Elena opened the email properties, the editing history was visible. Carla tried to interrupt, that's not, but Elena kept scrolling. Every altered instruction, every discrepancy displayed side by side. The manager slowly leaned back in his chair. Then he looked at Carla. Why does this version look different? Carla's voice got tight. I must have forwarded the wrong one. Elena clicked another tab. Actually, it happened 5 times. Now the room was silent, because this wasn't miscommunication anymore. This was a pattern. The meeting ended early. Carla was asked to stay behind, and the next week, her desk was empty. Reputation sabotage is tricky because it rarely happens loudly. It happens with small edits, tiny changes, little doubts planted over time. But once the receipts show up, the entire narrative collapses. But this last story, though, this one is strategic. Marcus thought his older brother Nathan was doing him a favor. Their father had passed away unexpectedly, and someone had to handle the estate paperwork. Nathan volunteered. "I'll take care of it," he told the family. Marcus trusted him. Nathan was older, more organized, better with financial stuff. Months passed. Occasionally, Nathan would update everyone. The paperwork's still processing. Lawyers are reviewing some documents. Nothing unusual. Until Marcus noticed something strange. Their father had always been open about finances. He'd mentioned roughly how much money was in his savings and investment accounts. But when Nathan finally shared the inheritance breakdown, the numbers were lower. Not dramatically lower, just enough to raise questions. Marcus called Nathan. "Hey, the totals seem different than what Dad told us before." Nathan replied quickly, "Markets changed. Some accounts lost
Value. That explanation made sense. For a while. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling something was off. So he did something simple. He called the bank. Not to accuse anyone, just to ask general questions about estate transfers. The representative explained something interesting. Large transfers typically create documentation trails. Marcus asked one more question. Would those transfers show up before the estate is finalized? Yes, the representative said. Marcus sat quietly, because now the suspicion had a direction. He contacted the estate lawyer and requested copies of the financial records, which he had every legal right to do. A week later, the documents arrived. Marcus opened them at his kitchen table, and within 5 minutes, he found it. A transfer request from the estate account to a personal account, Nathan's account. The request had been flagged and stopped by the bank because the estate hadn't been legally distributed yet, but the attempt was still there. Marcus stared at the screen. Not angry, just stunned. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an attempt, a quiet one. The family scheduled a meeting with the lawyer to finalize everything. Nathan walked in confidently. He sat down across from Marcus. The lawyer started explaining the distribution timeline. Then, Marcus spoke. "Before we continue, can we talk about this?" He slid the printed transfer document across the table. Nathan looked at it. His expression froze. The lawyer leaned forward and read it, then slowly looked up. "Nathan, can you explain this transfer request?" Nathan immediately went defensive. "That's not what it looks like." Marcus stayed calm. "Then what does it look like?" Nathan tried another angle. "I was moving money temporarily for tax reasons." The lawyer shook his head. "That's not how estate funds work." The room went quiet, because family betrayals hit differently. When coworkers betray you, you find another job. When friends betray you, you find new friends. But when family betrays you, that fracture goes deeper. Nathan eventually admitted he had tried to move the money. His explanation changed 3 times in 5 minutes. The lawyer documented everything. The estate distribution was reassigned to a neutral third party, and Nathan's relationship with the rest of the family never recovered. Because trust doesn't usually break in dramatic explosions. It breaks in quiet attempts people thought no one would notice. And that's the common thread across all 3 of these stories. Screenshots, email trails, bank records. The modern world leaves evidence everywhere. People often assume they're controlling the narrative, but narratives collapse the moment receipts appear. Dylan's friend group imploded because private conversations stopped being private. Carla's reputation collapsed because edited emails still carry timestamps. Nathan's plan failed because financial systems record every attempt. And there's a psychological lesson buried in all of that. People who manipulate situations rely on one assumption, that nobody will look closely, that the story they tell will be accepted without verification. But once someone decides to check the receipts, the entire power dynamic flips, because truth doesn't need volume, it just needs documentation. And honestly, the most interesting part of these situations isn't the exposure moment, it's the calm right before it. The moment someone decides, "I'm not arguing, I'm just showing the evidence," that moment changes everything. Because accusations can be debated,
evidence can't. So now I'm curious, out of these three, who crossed the line the most? Jake with the secret group chat? Carla editing emails to sabotage someone's career? Or Nathan trying to quietly move inheritance money? Let me know in the comments. This is VoxQueue, and around here, we don't just read the drama, we break it down. I want to know, who crossed the line the most? Drop your take below. I read all of them. I'll see you in the next one.